Crockett was on with Jim Acosta today, and she's had an incredible week. Really fact-checked Jim Jordan and Comer and co. And just listen to what she says, because there's very little to disagree. Just very little.
Okay, all right. So we love the Constitution today, and we also want to talk about foreign money coming in. Have y'all seen the report that was just produced where this chairman decided that he was going to block this committee from receiving additional information about y'all's guy, Trump, and all the money that he took? From what we did receive, we know that Trump got almost $6 million that we can account for, and we know that there's more there. From China specifically, we found almost $8 million total that he accepted from foreign governments while he was serving as the president of these United States. But we're concerned about the president's son who has not been involved in his administration. I just want to run it back, though, to the very beginning, because this is something that I just can't get over. I can't get over the gentle lady from South Carolina talking about white privilege. It was a spit in the face, at least of mine as a black woman, for you to talk about what white privilege looks like, especially from that side of the aisle. And let me quote your now ousted speaker and what he had to say about the Republican Party and y'all's lack of diversity. When you look at the Democrats, they actually look like America. When I look at my party, we look like the most restrictive country club in America. So let me tell you something. Y'all don't know what white privilege looks like, but I'm gonna show you a little bit of something. You see, you want to talk about a two-tier justice system, and this is the only time that y'all have ever referenced it, when this country has a history when it comes to black and brown folk of having two separate sets of rules. And right now what you want to do is have two separate sets of rules, because Mr. Moskowitz offered y'all a fair situation. He said he would vote for Hunter to be held in contempt if y'all voted to hold all, even if you remove all of the members of Congress. There's still other people that y'all haven't decided that y'all have excuses for, but y'all don't want to hold them in contempt. But for some reason, it makes sense to hold Hunter Biden in contempt, who has tried to comply. And let me tell you why nobody wants to talk to y'all behind closed doors, because y'all lie. That's just the bottom line. You have done it thus far in this investigation. You have done it this far as it relates to this committee. In every single hearing, y'all spin, spin, spin. I don't know how y'all are still standing right now, because you should be quite dizzy from all the spinning that you're constantly doing when it comes to spinning the truth. You talk about free and fair elections, but you back a guy who we know tried to steal the election. And this isn't about what Democrats have to say. Let me remind you, for those of you that don't know how the justice system works, it's not a matter of the president went in and indicted Trump, but we are talking about grand juries. Grand juries are comprised of American citizens, and the people that have entered pleas of guilty that will be flipping on your leader in a minute, they are Republicans. I do want to point that out. And half of them were Republicans that were handpicked by Donald Trump himself. So, to be clear, whatever happens to your little leader, it's going to be because of the actions that he took. So you can talk all you want to about how January 6th was nonsense, but all of y'all were running at that time. Y'all were grabbing y'all's gas masks, and y'all were running to your offices because you didn't know if they were coming to kill you. You should have cared that somebody was there to protect you, but instead you want to play games because you found out that it was your leader that decided that he wanted to propagate an insurrection on our country. So don't tell me that you care about the Constitution, because you don't. All you care about is Trump getting reelected, and I'll yield the last of my time to my leader.
Do you want to see Hunter Biden testify, either in front of the cameras, behind closed doors? Would he make life easier on himself to just
To be perfectly honest, I don't really care. I'm going to be honest, because this is supposed to be about impeaching the president. But when you have idiots, and I am intentionally calling her an idiot, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who wants to flash nude pictures, I wouldn't take these people seriously, right? Like, so are you wanting me behind closed doors because you want to dig into my personal sexual life? Does that have anything to do with the president of the United States and him being impeached? If we had serious people, then I probably would care, because I would say this is a serious body of people that are looking for something because they have something. But they have been investigating Hunter for years. It started under the Trump administration. If you had something, I promise you, they wouldn't have held back. And so it's a bunch of games. You know, what his lawyers think is best for him, then so be it. But to say that he's spitting in the face of Congress is just false. He has tried to present himself. He has tried to present himself under the parameters that were laid out by our chairman. And, you know, again, they just change their minds. They do what they want to do. They're just kind of blowing by the wind. So who knows?
Congresswoman here, one of your colleagues, Democratic Congressman Henry Cuellar, posted today on X that 3 migrants, including a female adult and 2 children, drowned in the Rio Grande River earlier today. And this is just after Texas was blocking Border Patrol agents from accessing parts of the border. Are you hearing anything about this? What's your reaction?
My reaction is that we knew this was going to happen. And I'd argue that my governor, who continues to promulgate heartless policies, knew this was going to happen as well. As far as I'm concerned, this was very intentional. It's one of the reasons that Texas Democrats have urged DOJ to get involved on more than one occasion with the razor wire and the various kind of death traps that our governor set. We knew this, right? But for some reason, there is a belief that is somehow permeating through the Republican Party that if you're a migrant, your life doesn't matter. And this is coming from the pro-life folk, where they're not recognizing that this is illegal and it's inhumane. These people are presumably coming over to seek asylum. That means that they're trying to flee the possibility of losing their lives, and to only get this far and to lose your life as you are seeking freedom is just, it's heartbreaking.
And the president has said, you know, in response
that he showed up. I mean, we were having a markup about the fact that they're trying to...
Congresswoman Nancy Mace said she would like to see Hunter Biden behind bars.
Yeah, I'm sure she would. You know, listen, that's just so that they can campaign on that, right? Again, they continue to say that they don't have anything to campaign on. You know, if you want to see Hunter behind bars, you should want to see your colleagues, half of them that were voting to hold him in contempt, who still have subpoenas out. And here's the deal. As someone who has been an officer of the court, I am very respectful to court proceedings and court-like proceedings, which is what this is. You know, I think that we all should respect it. But once you have a group that just blatantly ignores it, then it tears down your ability to enforce it with another group. And that's when they claim about two-tier systems, that's when we see it actually playing out.
But do you...
Ms. Crockett from Texas.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Before I begin my questioning, I want to remind everyone that the information recorded in the FBI Form 1023 that my Republican colleagues keep citing is not evidence of anything. This form reflects years-old, secondhand, unverified information from a Ukrainian oligarch as relayed to the FBI by a confidential human source. These unverified secondhand allegations have been repeatedly debunked and undermined, including by the confidential human source who relayed this information to the FBI. The tip recorded in the Form 1023 was thoroughly explored by the U.S. attorney handpicked by Donald Trump, which was Attorney General William Barr, and the assessment was closed. Finally, Devin Archer, Hunter Biden's former business partner who worked with the Ukrainian oligarch in question, told this committee in a transcribed interview in July that he had no knowledge of any such payments allegedly described in this form. Repeating the same lies will not somehow turn them into truths. Kind of like the election that Trump lost. Say it with me. He lost it. Repeating the same lie that he won wasn't going to turn the election around. The lost in this chamber keep pushing lies and lunacy on behalf of a multi-time loser. So if we're going to talk about China, let's go ahead and talk about China. And let's talk about the dealings. And let me point out the fact that right now, each of you has admitted that none of you are fact witnesses. We walked in without facts. And unfortunately, because what we say isn't necessarily evidence, we have wasted the American people's time, and we are going to walk out of this chamber and we still have no facts that are leading to anything. But let me give y'all a little bit of tea while we're here. So I have a document that I will ask for unanimous consent to enter into the record. It's a fact sheet on President Trump's shady business dealings with the Chinese government.
What are you entering in? A record from who?
This is from the Congressional Integrity.
Congressional Integrity Project, the dark money pack?
I object.
I object to that, too.
Of course y'all gonna object, but we gonna talk about it. So, it says Trump has extensive financial ties to the Chinese government. President Trump collected millions from Chinese government-owned entities while in office. I have the best tenants in the world, President Trump was well aware of the multi-million-dollar lease to Chinese interests. President Trump promised to donate foreign government profits while in office, but he donated less than a third of his proceeds from the Chinese government. President Trump maintained 3 foreign bank accounts while in office, including one in China. President Trump's business with China raised legal and ethical concerns. President Xi loves the people of China. He loves his country, and he's doing a very good job. Let me tell you something. I don't want to talk about what y'all want to act like is some big mystery, because we keep sitting here, and Professor Gerhardt, just to be clear, as my colleagues have even tried to provide evidence, which they're not the ones to provide evidence, have you ever heard them say "if" since we've been sitting here for I don't know how long?
Yes, I've been taking a tally.
Oh, okay. Can you show us? Can you tell us what the tally is?
More than 35 times, the Republican witnesses and Republican members of the committee have used the word "if."
Thank you so much for that. Because honestly, if they would continue to say "if" or "Hunter" and we were playing a drinking game, I would be drunk by now. Because I promise you, they have not talked about the subject of this, which would be the president. But let me tell you something that was so disturbing as I walked in to this chamber today. As I prepared, I said, what is the crime? Because when you're talking about impeachment, you're talking about high crimes or misdemeanors. And I can't seem to find the crime. And honestly, no one has testified of what crime they believe the president of the United States has committed. But when we start talking about things that look like evidence, they want to act like they blind. They don't know what this is. These are our national secrets. Looks like in the shitter to me. This looks like more evidence of our national secrets, say on a stage at Mar-a-Lago. When we're talking about somebody that's committed high crimes, it's at least indictments. Let's say 32 counts related to unauthorized retention of national security secrets, 7 counts related to obstructing the investigation, 3 false statements, 1 count of conspiracy to defraud the United States, falsifying business records, conspiracy to defraud the United States, 2 counts related to efforts to obstruct the vote certification proceedings, 1 count of conspiracy to violate civil rights, 23 counts related to forgery or false document statements, 8 counts related to soliciting, and I could go on because he's got 91 counts pending right now. But I will tell you what the president has been guilty of. He has unfortunately been guilty of loving his child unconditionally, and that is the only evidence that they have brought forward. And honestly, I hope and pray that my parents love me half as much as he loves his child. Until they find some evidence, we need to get back to the people's work, which means keeping this government open so that people don't go hungry in the streets of the United States. And I will yield.
This is recognized for 5 minutes.
This committee runs my pressure up, and I do come prepared to committee, and then there's always somebody from this side that does something ridiculous that throws me all the way off. So, oh Jesus. Okay, so this is where we're gonna start, Ms. Kaskin. First of all, let me apologize because that was uncalled for. So let me do what she would never do, which is to be an adult in this room or in this chamber. So let me start there. I'm also going to start with some nonsense that she was trying to spew, and unlike Ms. Boebert, I am legally trained, and I've passed a few bar exams, and I also legislated before I got here, so I do want to start with correcting the record a little bit, and if you want to add to that, please do. There was conversation about ATF, because my colleagues love to talk about their guns, baby. And I'm from Texas, so let me be clear. I also own firearms. Let me scream. Democrats own guns too. Let me make it clear. I own guns and I'm licensed to carry. That is a regulation. Regulations aren't necessarily bad. It didn't stop me from being able to get a gun. So we were talking about, or y'all were talking about the ATF, which I wasn't going there. I didn't plan to go there. But you know what? I honestly wish the ATF would run amok, because we know that seemingly the people that run this chamber don't have the courage to come up with one of the things we've heard is common sense regulations when it comes to guns. And to be clear, our Constitution, the Second Amendment, anticipates people having common sense. Unfortunately, we have not done that, and unfortunately, it has cost us lives. So when you were testifying a little bit earlier, you talked about unintended consequences and the fact that we are supposed to be able to anticipate that as lawmakers when we are writing laws. Unfortunately, not only have we ignored the unintended consequences, but we've got foreseeable consequences that are continually ignored. And that is why we are talking about regulation, at least on this side of the aisle. And our definition of common sense is one that doesn't keep us in the pockets of corporations, but keeps us in the pockets of the people. Because what I'm trying to do is save lives. My job isn't here to make sure that I'm pushing the bottom line for some corporation, but it's to make sure that the people that put me into this seat, which were actual people, individuals, to make sure that I can save lives. So let's talk about my state, because we always got good stuff coming out of Texas. Unfortunately, my state decided that it didn't want to be a part of the overall national grid, because my state did not want to deal with all of the quote-unquote red tape. The cost of that was lives. So we had this winter storm, and here it was, I was freshly being sworn into the Texas House, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do, because I started getting calls, because there is this thing called climate change. Hello, nobody's in the chamber on the other side. But climate change is this real thing. And so in Texas, we had this terrible storm that took place, and even though we are an energy capital, not just in this country, but in the world, for clean and dirty energy, unfortunately, we couldn't keep our own lights on, and it was all because they wanted to avoid red tape. You know what the cost of that was? It was human lives. And I think that that's what's being lost. You know what happened in Palestine or East Palestine? The cost was human lives. Unfortunately, seemingly, some people don't want to consider human lives as an actual cost. The only cost that they ever talk about is dollars. Well, let me be clear. I'm not here because of corporate dollars. I'm here because of people. And so I am curious to know, and I'm going to give you, and I usually run out of time. I'm going to be clear. I always run out of time because they always give me too much to do. But because of the way that you were treated, I am going to allow you the courtesy of expounding upon what it was that you were talking about with these agencies, which is pretty much what I understood, which is they only did what they were delegated to do, because if ATF could do more, I'm sure that we would actually get rid of the assault rifles that are constantly killing our babies every single day in this country. But go ahead, Ms. Kaskin, with the last 20 seconds.
Well, I appreciate your comments, and I thank you for them. And I don't disagree with anything that you said about the situation in Texas, where they declined to be part of the national pool and then suffered the consequences, which were real. And what I was trying to say earlier was that what the ATF has been doing is consistent with the authority that they had been granted by Congress, and to the extent they exceeded that authority in any way. This is the most litigious country in the world. Someone will take them to court, and if they really did the wrong thing, if they didn't stay within the constraints, the courts will so determine. I have complete confidence in that. But thank you again for your comments, ma'am.
Thank you so much, and with that, I'll yield. I come in this committee, and just when I think I can't be shocked anymore, I get shocked to the next level. And I listened to Dan, who I was with him in Israel in August, and I listened to him tell very real stories of real issues that are taking place in this world right now, issues that we have been charged with the responsibility of being the adults in the room and trying to solve. And as I listened to him, I thought, man, I was actually going to deal with what we're supposed to be talking about. And then, of course, I get a colleague from the other side of the aisle who could hear of the pain and suffering as Dan was telling the stories, and the only thing that he heard, because it's seemingly what happens in this chamber, is that there's a level of callousness and a lack of humanity a lot of times. We say the words, we care about the American people, but then the actions don't line up with caring about the American people. And so after hearing that story, the only thing that my colleague heard was about made up evidence as it relates to the former president, the twice impeached, 91 indicted count former president who's currently sitting in a fraud trial, who's also been found liable of sexual assault. The only thing that he heard was this bit about made up evidence. And so he says, well, the Democrats didn't have the right to do what they did when they impeached the president. I disagree. And it looks like at least 4 grand juries feel like they've got some evidence, or maybe that's made up as well. Or maybe once the convictions come down, which there will be a conviction in some territory, I say that with all confidence as someone who was practicing law for 17 years. I'm sure they will say that that was made up. I'm sure that they don't believe the co-defendants that have come out and pled guilty as it relates to the charges in Georgia, and I'm sure they think that that's made up. Just like they said that January 6th was made up after they ran for their lives. And I'm sure that they believe that the convictions that came out of January 6th, those were made up too. But let me tell you what's not made up as they live in their fairy tale world. What's not made up is that the government has a looming shutdown in 3 days, and they decided to drag you in and talk about the job that you're not doing. And before I go into it, I do appreciate the work that you do, especially as a girl that grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and fondly remembers the better days of Missouri when your father was the governor. So I will tell you what is not made up and what is real life. Number one, I want to recenter us on what it is your job is. Your job ain't got nothing to do with telework last time I checked. Is that true or not?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, because I don't know how the American people are going to get this straight when the members of Congress can't really figure out what your job is. So that's not your job. But you deal with a lot of real estate. So I just want to zone in on that because I don't have too much time left. But for those that don't understand, there's government leases, and most commercial leases go for more than a year, say, right?
Yes.
Yeah, usually more than maybe even 2 years, right?
Yes.
Usually a commercial lease is a very long-term lease, correct?
And the price usually goes down the longer the term.
Absolutely. So typically you're inclined to sign a longer lease, all right? But none of us saw COVID-19 happening. And while we are centered on talking about telework, it is really important that we zone in on something that you've said over and over and people are ignoring you. You said what makes it difficult for you to do your job is a lack of certainty. And this government shutdown, this is the second one just this year that we're running up on, and we're kicking the can down the road because we're going to run up on another one in January. It looks like we're going to run up on 2 now, January and February, if they can get this passed. Can you please explain why a lack of certainty has a negative impact on you doing what you are charged to do for the American people?
Yeah, thanks for that question. You know, real estate is a long-term thing. When you're buying a house or you're buying a piece of property, you don't just do that overnight. You have to plan your finances to make sure that it works. And when it comes to the federal government, it's not different. We have to have, particularly when we're maintaining buildings, we have to have a plan. We've got the biggest commercial real estate portfolio in the country. They're all in a different state of need, and we need to be able to have plans to address those things. And the only way you do that is with some certainty. And not having clarity about what a budget's going to be and kicking the can down to the road to the next year doesn't make the cost go down. It makes the cost go up. And so we've seen that happen over and over again because, again, of this lack of funding of the Federal Buildings Fund.
And you know what? To be clear, I remember when we had the first government shutdown looming, and we all have our own leases for our properties as well. I had to call my property manager and say, because the federal government can't get their stuff together, just so you know, I may not be able to pay my bills, and I hope you don't kick me out. That's not any way that we should be governing and talking about the fact that we are actually being fiscally responsible, because it's just the opposite of it. Thank you so much for your dedication to this country. I really appreciate your time and for you putting up with the antics.
Would the gentlelady yield to a question? Fine.